Hi, and welcome to the second part of our discussion on carbohydrates. Today we will continue with fiber, how to make better choices. So I know that grocery options right now are a bit different. You're not at home, you don't have the calf. Sorry, you're not at school, you don't have the calf if that was where you ate, or you are at home and now you're limited because of all that's happening with the quarantine and such. But in real life, or maybe you do have access, what are some things we could do to make better choices? So for example, we could add oats to our diet. A good bowl of oatmeal. I know some of you enjoy steel cut oats. Cold oat based cereals like Cheerios and whatnot is going to be giving you extra fiber. And then on top of that, if you're going to be adding some fruits to it, you're getting extra fiber. We're supposed to get 20 to 35 grams of fiber a day. Remember, again, it's not important to remember the difference between soluble and fiber, as a lot of them are interchangeable, but a lot of people don't consume enough fiber. Again, they're not eating a lot of whole foods. So we skipped the discussion on gut bacteria because of all that was happening last week, and that's one of my favorite things to read about and to talk about and just to kind of invest time into, because I find it fascinating and interesting. So a quick recap of it in case we don't end up getting to it. So our gut, put your hands on your belly, our guts host good and bad bacteria. The American diet is really good at feeding the bad bacteria, and it's really good at killing the good bacteria. How does this happen? So I mean the general stereotypical American diet, eats a lot of processed foods, sugars, fake sugars and such. We eat very little whole foods. So real food, it rots, right? Real food goes bad. Whole food has bacteria in it, and these are beneficial bacteria, the kind that is good for us. So our gut plays a huge role in our mood, how we sleep, anxiety, our attention spans, how often and what we crave for snacks and foods, and so much more. So when we have too much bad bacteria, so again, think processed, refined foods, sugars, sugary beverages, sweets, desserts, fake sugars, etc., it impacts our overall health. So think stomach aches, IBS, more. When we eat whole foods, like mentioned above, so a whole grain with the addition of bananas and strawberries, it acts as a marker, holding the place marker and not allowing the bad bacteria then to take hold of our guts. So why does this matter? So not only does fiber keep us full for longer, it allows the slow process of getting the nutrients our body needs, but it also helps our gut bacteria and the millions of microbes in our body. So as often as you have a chance, try to eat things that are real, that would rot if you left them out on a counter for a couple weeks, compared to things that could stay on your shelf for months and months and months. Moving on. I think that it would be great if you have access, if you're able to go to the grocery store during this time, trying to pick out a grain that you've never cooked with or that you've never implemented into your diet. I think it would be great if you even just start cooking more and you're in the kitchen and you're seeing how recipes work and whatnot, trying something new. The book that we're using for class, Eat, Drink, and Be Healthy, has an entire chapter at the end of the book dedicated to incredibly tasty recipes that you could try out. But try a different grain. Have you ever cooked with or eaten barley or other whole grains? They're fantastic. They've got a lot of fiber, and they're good for decreasing the risk of heart disease. Beans. So I really enjoy beans. Our teenager does not enjoy beans, which is a bummer, but beans are fantastic. And maybe if you have digestive issues, you would start with a bean that is not so gassy. There's mung beans, M-U-N-G beans, or you can soak your beans ahead of time to make them not so airy within your body. But beans are really great. They're a great source of protein, a plant-based protein. They help you to feel full for longer. It's not just pinto beans. It's not just black beans. So there are so many creative ways that you could incorporate beans into your diet. If we were all meeting together, if you see there at the bottom of the slide, I say, hey, tell your neighbor, other than Mexican food, other than a California burrito, I don't even know if California burritos have beans, but other than a burrito run, late night burrito run, what are ways that you can increase your bean intake? So right now I would like you, if you're writing notes, write 3 ways that you can incorporate beans into your diet other than just in the form of a burrito, and I will figure out a way for us to share this information in a discussion board thread or something. So what are some creative ways that you could add beans and incorporate beans into your diet? Nuts. We talked a little bit about nuts, or you read a little bit about nuts when you read about the 3 articles about fats, and that nuts are a great source of a monounsaturated fat. They keep you full for longer. I know a few of you have nut allergies, but those of you who don't, they're a great option to have. So things to be cautious of if you don't drink a lot of water, especially, or if you have high blood pressure. There's sometimes a lot of sodium in mixed nuts. There's a lot of salt put into them. So, you could think about that. But nuts are fantastic. They've been studied quite a lot. If you remember our chapter on research methods, people groups who consumed a lot of nuts later in life that had very few heart diseases and such. Okay, whole fruits and such. Again, this might be challenging for you right now during this time of self-containment, but fruits and vegetables and such are full of fiber. And are delicious and can be a dessert for you as well. So try some creative ways, maybe cut up some fruit and freeze them for a popsicle kind of a treat later, dip them in some dark chocolate, but try to increase your fruit consumption. Soy. I'm not sure how many of you enjoy soy or have ever had soy. For those of you who are worried about your testosterone levels, you would have to consume a lot of soy for it to interfere. So if you're interested in looking that up, go ahead and look that up. But yeah, a great way again to get a plant-based option of protein. Soy or tofu, various options are I think delicious and can be incorporated into a lot of different meals. Okay, you ready for this next slide? Poop. How many of you like to think about poop? So if you remember, my little our Rowan is 4 years old, and he thinks that bathroom humor is the funniest thing ever. So we hear lots of jokes about bottoms and about poo-poo and poopy, all sorts of things. But we, as a group of college-age professionals, are going to talk about poop just for a little bit and what fiber has to do with it and health and such. Okay, so the 3 and 3 rule. So I want you to think about what comes to mind when you think of 3 and 3. So have you ever played 3-on-3 basketball? So 3-on-3 basketball, this will be your memory stone, the thing that you think of when you think of poop, hopefully from now until the rest of your life. So what is the 3-on-3 rule, 3 and 3 rule, sorry, and what does it have to do with poop? So thinking about your bowel movements, and maybe they are different now that you're in a new location if you had to move compared to when you were in the dorms. How often are you doing a number 2? Some of you are very regular. You go on the same time at the same place, blah, blah, blah. Some of you maybe have not considered this. The general rule of thumb, and this can change with health and such. If you were in a hospital, they would want you to go more frequently. But the general rule of thumb is that you should go at least 1 time every 3 days or up to 3 times per day. If you are not having a bowel movement for 5 or 6 or 7 days, then you probably do not have enough fiber in your body and you need to contemplate changing your diet a bit. And if you are going way more than 3 times per day, then maybe you are eating things that are not agreeing with you. And you need to consider that. So there's that expanse of you could go once every 3 days or up to 3 times per day. Now, if you go 5 times in one day, but that's not your usual, that's fine. So what is your usual? If you want to talk about this, you may send me an email, but thinking about your bowel movement schedule. Why is this important? So how long are things staying in our body? So we're getting rid of the portions of food and the nutrients that we don't need, right? So we're getting rid of these bad things, of these carcinogens, potential carcinogens. So we don't want them in our body for 7, 8, 9, 10 days. If you're consuming more fiber, you're going to have more number twos. You're going to have smoother number twos. It won't cause as much inflammation, as much straining and pushing and whatnot. So it could be that you're not consuming enough fiber, but it also could be that you're not staying hydrated. So that is enough about poopsie poo. Moving on again. So carbohydrates and sugars. So this is a slide from the last video. Just wanted to remind you. So carbs are sugars when they are simples. A complex carb is a longer strand of sugar plus a starch plus a fiber. And then those are the letters at the end kind of showing you what a carbohydrate is. So where do these sugars come from? So photosynthesis, if you remember elementary science, photosynthesis is the process that occurs in the plants when they're in the presence of sunlight, and that creates the glucose in the plants. So sugars coming from the transformation of glucose. So glucose is what we could call blood sugars. So what are the locations, the originators of these sugars? So fructose, sugars, found through nature. So think about fruits and honeys and whatnot. Fructose is sweeter than glucose, which is why it's often used more in processed foods. So think we see in the news and you see in labels and such, high fructose corn syrup compared to plain table sugar. It's also our nation grows a lot of corn, and so they need to do something with it. But it makes things taste sweeter than they would if it was just using glucose. Lactose is a milk sugar. Sucrose, that's our table sugar. And then starch is our complex carbohydrate. So people talk about high fructose corn syrup being the enemy. It's so horrible. It is so horrible because it's added into so many things that it does not need to be added into. We don't need to add sugars into things that by nature don't have them, but we've gotten used to it. If you look at any of the popular peanut butter brands, they all have added sugar. Peanut butter could just be ground up peanuts, right? Almond butter could just be ground up almonds, but our society enjoys sweet things, and so high fructose corn syrup and sugars of some sort. So the problem isn't necessarily, and we could dive into this deeper if we were together, high fructose corn syrup, but the real problem is that we eat too many calories in sugars that don't need to be there in the first place. So sugar is worse than other types of carbs. Why? So in addition to the presence of fructose and these added sugars, there's generally then the absence of the fiber. So the absence of the fiber, then it isn't able to slow the digestion and slow these phytochemicals, so the nutrients coming from plants, to protect the body from the damage that these high glucose, high blood sugar levels can do. So we'll talk about diabetes and such and the insulin response in several slides. Okay, so some examples of better options for carbs, some examples of not as great options for carbs. So I would like you to look at this list and write down 3 things from the list that you regularly consume, and then 3 things from the list that you could maybe start consuming or that you could add into your diet. So this is another one that I'll have you write it down right now, and then you'll incorporate it into the discussion board conversation. So remember, good carbs, higher in fiber, feeling full for longer, bad carbs, lower in fiber, not as many nutrients, more sugars and such. You're not going to stay full for as long, and then you're going to end up, your brain is going to be saying, hey, I want to eat again. Okay, think about what you drink. So in this slide, if we were together, I would have you hold your spoon up. We've done this already in class. I don't remember if I showed you the slide or just told you the information. The average American adult is drinking 350 calories of sugar every day. So hold your teaspoon and get 20 teaspoons of sugar and just eat it, right? You're not going to just sit there and eat 20 teaspoons of sugar. So again, think about what are you drinking, especially now that you're housebound. Are you drinking more and more and more sugary products? If so, hide them in the back of your fridge, hide them in the back of your cupboard, and try to drink more waters. Have water there available, because that's the equivalent of adding 1 pound of body fat every 10 days, which is not good for your health, especially if you're less active right now because of what's going on. Here's a picture of somebody's science project showing you the amount of sugar in the various drinks and whatnot. The one with water, I'm not sure what that is, but I'm hoping that you're not drinking a super big gulp ever. Okay, insulin. So if you've already taken the chapter quiz on chapter 6, this is a refresher on what was there with the quiz. So insulin response. So say you eat something with carbohydrates, blood sugar, blood glucose goes up, insulin is released by the pancreas and in response to the glucose enters the cells for storage, glycogen, or adipose tissue, and then the blood glucose level returns to baseline. Now, if you're saying, wait, what? Insulin moves glucose into the blood, to move glucose in the blood into cells for use. So the insulin response. So that's what I had just said. So what happens when our blood sugar is going up? So how does our body get us back to homeostasis? So the result of an insulin response is a lower blood glucose level. So how does our body get it back down to normal? And is that good for you? So temporary diabetes. So if you were to pop open a bag of Skittles or whatever your favorite candy is and eat the whole thing, or drink a big gulp or whatnot, not also with an apple or with some carrots or on an empty stomach, you're essentially giving yourself temporary diabetes. So there are 2 types of diabetes. Type 1 is not because of choices and lifestyle choices that people are made because of something that you were born with, a genetic condition. Type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes. It was something that happened in older people as their bodies were kind of wearing down and they weren't as active as they used to and were not maybe eating as well as they used to. But it is so common now that it's called childhood onset diabetes. So signs and symptoms of diabetes: peeing a lot, being thirsty a lot, weight loss, nausea, irritability, craving sweets, infections that aren't healing as well as they should, and vision. Infections and visions are usually the symptoms that are noted much later on. So insulin resistance. So what would cause our body not to be able to handle sugar in a way that it's supposed to? So an excess amount of body fat, especially around the belly. Inactivity. Our muscle cells handle insulin and glucose much better than fat cells. So again, trying to do body weights and movement and whatnot, trying to get your BMR higher, basal metabolic rate higher. Remember, muscle burns more than fat just by keeping you alive. And fat cells are not clearing the glucose from the bloodstream as well as muscle cells do. And then if you're consuming a lot of dietary fats, so remember 2018, we're no longer allowed to have trans fatty acids, those TFAs, but a higher intake of TFAs causes your body to have greater resistance to insulin. And then 4th, this is one that obviously you cannot do anything about other than being aware of it. And then if you're aware of it, you might be more mindful of the choices that you are making. So this is a visual review of what I said a few slides ago. So here's an example, our normal blood glucose range, 70 to 110. Say that food, exercise, and insulin sugars are not balanced, and then we get high blood sugar. So what is the insulin response to high blood sugar? So what happens here? So I'm going to click all of these now, and then I will talk through it. How does our body get us back down to the normal blood glucose range? So say the blood sugar goes up, our pancreas releases insulin to regulate the high sugar level, It transports the glucose to storage sites in the cells. They're stored as glycogen. If these storage sites are full, though, it will be stored as fat. So the result then of an insulin response is a lower blood glucose level. So that would be, say that you ate a bunch of candy again on an empty stomach. That's the process right there. So then what would happen if, say you are doing intermittent fasting or you haven't eaten for a really long time and you're kind of feeling that shakiness. So what are those feelings of shaky? What's going on? So again, I'll click all of these and then I'll talk you through it. How does our body, if we are low in blood glucose, how does our body get us back up? So the opposite effect of insulin, so hormone is secreted by the pancreas when blood glucose levels are low. It tells the liver to produce glucose. So the glucagon response to low blood glucose, our blood sugar goes down. Our pancreas releases glucagon to regulate the low sugar levels. There's a breakdown of glycogen into glucose. There's an increased synthesis of glucose, and then the result of that glucagon response is a higher blood glucose level. So our body is always trying to keep us within this normal range, but the choices that we make can either cause elevated levels or can cause too low of blood glucose. Okay. So challenges for the week. So I would like you to consider what you are drinking. I already asked you, what are you drinking? Are you drinking a lot of sugary drinks? Are you not drinking at all and you need to remind yourself to drink? Or are you drinking mostly water, coffees, and teas? And then consider what you are snacking on. Are you snacking on refined carbs, sweets, chips, foods that are more dense? Are you snacking on nuts, avocados, fruits, veggies, and such? And how often are you consuming food now that you're kind of housebound? Are you finding that you're forgetting to eat, or are you finding that you're eating just because it's there? So if you are forgetting to eat, maybe set yourself a reminder. And if you're eating just because it's there, remember to have it behind a cupboard or something, because if we see it, we're going to just be grabbing it and grabbing it and grabbing it. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry this was a little longer than I expected, but I hope that you enjoy your day.